Hello friends, this is lesson number 79 in the series of British literature in English. In this video we shall continue our discussion on Jacobean age and also we shall discuss the important points related to the Caroline age. So, Jacobean age, that is the reign of James the First of England. So, in the last video, we just discussed uh, James the First. There was a gunpowder plot against him. So now we here have just a detailed points of this gunpowder plot. So what was that? Some of the parliamentarians or the member of parliaments, including the man Robert Catesby. So I just write the name Robert Catesby. Okay, may not be that important name because there was never a question by that, but just for the knowledge sake. So he was leading this plot or conspiracy, and these parliament members they decided to kill the king, and they wanted to establish the power of the Catholics. So the plan was to fill the basement of the Westminster Palace. So many of times you will see this name, Westminster Palace. Okay, Westminster will be the name you will see manywhere. Westminster Abbey or so. So the basement of this palace was supposed to be filled with gunpowder. Okay, that's some sort of explosive. So in that palace, mostly those political meetings of the high-profile people used to be held. And there was a special date that was the 5th of 11, okay, 5th of November 1605. On that day, there was a meeting promised to be held. So on, okay, some of the dates, 26th of October, 26th of October, there was a letter, anonymous, so there was no name, there was a letter sent to William Parker. Now one more name we have, William Parker. Okay, I'm just writing these names. So asking him not to attend the meeting. And there might be a case that William Parker was somewhere in close connection or maybe a relative of those rebellious people. So that is why they were asking him not to take part in the meeting that's supposed to be held on 5th of November 1605. And then he shared the information with the royals and the king, and the king acted very smartly. On the 4th of November 1605, they started searching the whole palace just to make sure that there is uh, nothing as to hurt them, or there is nothing against the court or the authority. So in the basement, Guy Fawkes name I told you earlier. So Guy Fawkes, he was caught with 36 barrels of gunpowder, means that so much gunpowder he had, explosives. So he was caught, and then he was arrested, and he was, as a death punishment, chopped into pieces brutally. So severe death punishment was given to Guy Fawkes, and many more people were arrested as well. And uh, some of them maybe escaped away from London, but later the day 5th of November was celebrated as Bonfire Day because many of the bonfires were lit in celebration, and because the king was saved. And even the replicas or the images of or even the, you can say, uh, replica means some of the putle in Hindi, we can say something, statues or effigies, they were burnt just to mark that Guy Fawkes was killed and king was saved, as we do with Ravan on the Shera, the same sort of things. So that is about the Gunpowder Plot. So now the King James the First, he married Anne of Denmark, and this lady, she died in the year 1619. She died, and from this lady he had several children. So name of these children are not that important. Like son, he had Henry. Okay, he died so early, and then daughter Elizabeth, she, okay, lived up to the age of 65 or so. He had one more daughter, Margaret. She died just by the age of one year. And one important name among his children, or that is Charles the First. He became the King of England. So we shall discuss. So remember, by the name James, we have the Jacobean age and his son Charles. So in England, by the name Charles, we have the first king. That is why his name is termed as Charles the First of England. He was born in the year 1600 and died 1649. And remember, James the First, he died because of illness. He died. And now we have a lot to discuss about Charles the First. By the year 1625, by the death of James the First, we have the end of the Jacobean age, and now we have the beginning of the Caroline age. Okay, so in this chapter or in this segment, we have several questions as well related to Jacobean age and also Caroline age. We shall discuss them, but quickly we shall have a quick look on Charles the First. Born in the year 1600, and he was the king of Ireland, England, Scotland, Great England, the Great Britain. He was the king, and he was quite opposite to his father. He had no interest or trust of the House of Commons, and he believed himself as the Son of God. Son of God, a divine rule. He thinks that kings are bound to rule. Kings are bound to rule. So by birth, he has this this power to rule the people of England. So he considered himself quite superior, and he thinks that there is a divine rule. With the God's permission, he is ruling England. So now what's happened more? But first, okay, he married Henrietta Maria of France. Okay, so his wife, she has so much role to play in his political life. She was a Catholic. His wife, she was Catholic, and she was so much dominant. Okay, first we shall take one point. During that time, the Protestants were increasing in numbers and the Catholics were marginalized. And then he married Henrietta Maria, and she was a Catholic. Now, most of the people were upset, sorry, And they were thinking that now they have the chance for Catholicism. I told you that the Catholics they were marginalized, Protestants were dominating. So by the marriage of the King Charles I to Henrietta, a Catholic, now people start thinking that there is possibility that now Catholicism would rise because the King Charles I, he was a lavish sort of person. He was carefree. He was always lost in his lavishness. He was just leading a luxury life, no concern of his parliament or even the common people. He had no concern. And also because she belonged to France. Now, even the people from France were also thinking that they can get hold of England because the lady from France, she was the Queen of England, and the King Charles I, he was already uh, down because he was not taking concern of his rule or his palace or the parliament. And even France and England, by the history you can check, they were never in good terms. There was always a question of superiority. French people, they think they are superior. Britishers, English, they think they are superior. And there was some sort of fight was going on. And even during the period of the colonization, you see France and England or Britain, they are the two dominating power of Europe. Anyway, so the King Charles I, he was spendthrift. He was simply spending money on his personal luxuries, and he used the treasure for his own enjoyment and also for his wife. He had hundred of mistresses. So by that you can easily get an idea that he was just having a lavish life. And he had established a star chamber, a special court for upper class people. All these things simply upset the common people, upset the parliamentarians, the royal peoples. They were just getting against the people who had social concerns, they were getting against the king. And further, he imposed heavy taxes and fines on the common people, on the rich people. And even he started getting bribe. He was getting money to give the royal titles like you have knighthood. So some sort of a royal titles he was just giving to the people, whoever gives him money. So he was absolutely corrupted. And he was charging lot of tax from the ships whoever pass his coastal area of England. And for a decade or almost 10 11 years there was no you can say simply no freedom for the parliamentarians. It was tyrant rule of the Charles the First. And during that time England was also going in warlike situation with Scotland, and a lot of fund was also required. And then because king cannot rule everything itself, he had to get some support from the parliamentarians. So he was in the year 1640s when England was almost like at war against the Scotland. He requested the member of the parliaments to come up and help him to tackle that issue. So these members came up and they put forth their conditions. Some of the conditions towards the in front of the king they put up like first to execute his chief advisor Thomas Wentworth for treason, and also they stopped the king from dissolving the parliament. They further asked the king to at least hold a meeting with the parliamentarians in 3 years, once in a 3 year, and also permission of Lord Keeper and 12 peers to call the meeting if king does not. So there may be some other royal people who will call the meeting if the king is not calling. So simply they want some sort of powers, the parliamentarians, they wanted that they should be given some powers. And they also asked the king not to impose high taxes because he has imposed heavy taxes on the people. So simply they asked him. And Charles eventually he had to get agreed. But still at heart he was having some hatred against them. And one more thing you should remember, Catholics, they were against the Puritans or the Protestants. Puritans are also of the same view as the Protestants, but the Puritans are a bit more strict in their practices. So these people, Puritans, they already have one view that one should not go for lavish life. So that is why the Puritans or the Protestants, they were against the King Charles the First. So remember, Charles the First, he supported the Catholics. Charles Catholics, you can just associate them. On the other hand, Queen Elizabeth and James the First, they almost supported the Protestants. And by the Charles I, we see that the Catholics see that there is a window opening for them to come in power or so. Anyway, so things were getting tough and difficult for the parliamentarians as the king was just going with the luxury life and the spending money. So then we have the Civil War that started in the year 1642 and 1649. It ended 7 years. Civil war means when there is a social unrest in the country and the king's power was not that much effective. Remember, he became the king in the year 1625 and up to 1642 he was almost in power. Okay, officially he was in power up to 1649 till his death, but effectively his power was up to the year 1642 because afterward he was just helpless. He was running away from the country. So what happened during the civil war now? Most of the civil war, there were the two main parties you can say who were taking part or they were fighting against them. One were the Catholics, and other was the Puritans or the Protestants. So what happened? The Puritans, they banned a lot of things. They banned the luxury things because they are against these overjoyed celebrations. So simply they shut down even the theaters. And then Charles, he attacked the parliament with 300 soldiers only to arrest his critics. Who were his critics? The Puritans, the Protestants, or the people of the parliament. And there was a social unrest. And then we have one man rising. Remember this name, Oliver Cromwell. Oliver Cromwell. He was a royal courtier. Okay, he was from the court, official person he was, and he was in favor of the common public or common people. He was against the tyrant rule of Charles I. So he led the army, Oliver Cromwell, against the king with 10,000 or so, means with many soldiers. He led the army, and then Charles I, he fled from Oxford, from London, first from Oxford, then to London, and then he was almost taking shelter in France. Some of the developments more happened, like uh, in the north and southwest England, north and southwest, just for knowledge sake. In these regions, the people, they were in the favor of the king. So the people who were in the favor of the king, they are called as royalist. Okay, royalist these people were. And even the, okay, one literary term we can take, Caroline. Caroline age we know. Then we have Caroline age poets. The poets who were in the favor of the king Charles I, they are called as Caroline age poets. They were always portraying the king Charles I in good image. They were creating good image of that king. And in the other part, the southeast and London, there were the majority of the rebellious people, the parliamentarians, and they were just going against the royalist. And we have Oliver Cromwell. He can be termed as the leader, the head of the rebellions, who was leading the charge. And he was a good leader, he was educated, he was Puritan, and he forces the reconstruction of the parliament. And he established a new model army. Remember, new model army. Who established? Oliver Cromwell. And then we have the Battle of Naseby. Okay, I just write the name. Battle of Naseby. Okay, this battle, it happened on in the year 1645. Okay, you know that there is a civil war from 1642 to 1647. It was almost in two phases. So during the first phase, we have the Battle of Naseby. So in that battle, Oliver's army won against the royalists. They captured all the weapons, and then the new model army, they seized Oxford, and the King Charles I, he disguised himself as a servant and he fled to Scotland. And in Scotland we have the Presbyterian army. We talked about this, Presbyterians. These people are almost as the Puritans. Again, these facts can help you. As I am saying, in Scotland, there is Presbyterian. Okay, Presbyterian army. Presbyterian army. So now, as I am saying, the Presbyterians are the Puritans or favoring the Puritans. So simply they are against the Catholics. So they are against the Charles I. So Charles I is going for help to his enemies. And instead of helping him, they just held him captivated. Simply they arrested him like that. So then there was some sort of a negotiation among the Cromwell's army and also among the Scotland's, and finally an agreement was signed with the 1 lakh euro or so, whatever it was, and Charles I, he was handed over to Oliver Cromwell's army. And then Charles I, he was kept in his house as a house arrest, you can say, at Holden by House in Northernshire. Okay, anyway, it may be a place. Still, still, Charles the First, he was planning. Okay, the video is getting longer, so I'll just quickly finish this one off. Still, Charles the First, he was thinking of controlling the parliamentarians and getting back into the power. He's in the house arrest and still he's thinking. Anyway, so Oliver Cromwell, he realized that there may be a danger keeping the king alive. So finally, he killed, he beheaded the king for treason in the year 1649. So he was killed. So that is why we have the end of the Charles the One, his reign in the year 1649. So by that we have the end of the Caroline age. So this is all about the Jacobean age and Caroline age. Now we have some of the questions, important ones from the previous year questions paper. So let us have a quick discussion on them. So just remember, James the First is still a good writer, still a worthy king. Charles the First is absolutely opposite to it. He was not a good king, and during that period, the people suffered a lot. The first question, okay, it is based on the ages. So simply read the question and try to find the correct chronological order of these events. So first, the death of Shakespeare, accession of James the First to English throne, Caxton and printing press, Norman conquest of England. So for each of these events, we have a year. So we can easily answer. The first comes the Norman conquest. Sorry, conquest. Okay, whatever. Sometimes we find any word difficult to pronounce. Conquer or conquest. So that happened in the year 1066. And then we have the Caxton printing press, that was William Caxton. Remember the name, we have discussed already. 1476 or so. And James the First, when he got to the throne, 1603. And the death of Shakespeare, that happened in the year 1616. So by that you can simply reverse the fourth, then third, then second, and then the first. So this is the correct chronological order. Next one, the accession or ascension, whatever. Okay, some words are difficult to pronounce. King James the First inaugurated the Jacobean age in the year 1603. Francis Bacon's, we have discussed this question already. The advancement of learning was dedicated to King James the First. Elizabethan age, Elizabethan settlement, established during the reign of Queen Elizabeth. Okay, so we have to choose which two statements are correct regarding this. So the first, ensure the supremacy. Elizabethan settlement. What is settlement? Means Elizabeth, she put some rules or conditions before the people to establish some sort of a harmony among the people of England, because Catholics and Protestants, they were almost like at war. There was bloodshed, hatred, everything. So she established some sort of a rules and settlement. What is the means purpose of that, or what happened by that? So ensure the supremacy of the Church of England, right? Because she thinks Anglican Church, or she asked the people to consider the Church of England, Anglican Church, to be above all. Second, allow the Christians to acknowledge the authority of Pope. Now, this is against it. She never allowed, because that is the Catholics' belief. So she did not allow. So second is wrong one. Allow the extremers Protestant to be part of Anglican Church? Yes, she asked the Protestants. Protestants were the part of Anglican Church, not the Catholics. So this one is right. First and third. Created a group known as Roundheads. So this one I never heard, so you can just take it as wrong. So option first and third both are correct. So this is the right answer. Next, so just a few more questions. So video is already in the excess of 30 minutes, so sorry for that. Identify important theatres of the Elizabethan period. So pretty simple, Globe and Swan Theatre. So these are just common name. Globe Theatre associated with William Shakespeare, and then Swan Theatre as well. Next, in the following list, which two actors belong to the Elizabethan period? Sometimes we have a question that is almost like a jolt from the blue or something like means of utter surprise. We cannot really have an idea about that. So such questions we cannot. Which are the two actors? So now they are asking about the actors of the Elizabethan period. So simply you just just take the answer. There is no argument behind that or any detail. So Richard Burbage and William Kemp, these two were the actors from the Elizabethan period. Because what more do we learn? We just have to learn writers, poets, not the actors. Anyway, next one, arrange the following English literary periods in order chronology. Yes, Elizabethan, Caroline, Anglo-Norman, early Tudor. So I think you can do. First Anglo-Norman, that starts with the 1066 Anglo-Norman period. And Anglo means the English, and Norman means French. Duke of Normandy, that was in the 1066. So remember, just Norman conquest. So we have Anglo-Norman first, then early Tudor dynasty. Tudor dynasty, that was in the year or 13th century or 14th century, Tudor dynasty. So that comes second, and then we have Elizabethan and then Caroline. So we all know this. So moving on to the one more and last question. What is the correct sequence of the various periods of English literature? Now these two are quite similar one. So if you don't know all, just try to just set Caroline and Jacobean. So the first comes Jacobean and then Caroline. All the other ones are of the, you can say, later periods. So after that we have the Restoration period. Okay, we write the period for each of these ages. Caroline, we know 1625 to 1649. And the first that comes is 1603 to 1625. Okay, the third one, Restoration, comes later. First comes the Commonwealth period, 1649. Means when Charles I was killed, and after that for 11 years there was no particular ruler of England. That is the period of Commonwealth, and during that period we have Commonwealth age, and that is 1649 to 1660. And after that 1660, after the Commonwealth period, because in the Commonwealth period all the luxuries or whatever with the things that we discussed about Charles the First, he enjoyed the luxury things. Each of these things were banned. Even the theatres were banned in the Commonwealth period. And then after the Commonwealth period, we mark the beginning of the Restoration. Means the theatres were again restored. So this is how you can remember. So Restoration comes after the Commonwealth. So that is up to the year 1688 or so. Then comes a battle, I think. Okay, we shall discuss about that later. So Restoration age and Augustan age, that comes in the early part of the 18th century. So during the 1700 or so, that is the period of Augustan age. So these are the, so now you can easily set them into chronological order. One more question was there that is related to the notable work of the Jacobean age. What is that? That is the translation of Bible, King James Bible. King James Bible, that is the notable work of the Jacobean age. So that is all for this lesson. It's a long lesson, but we have discussed the history of Jacobean age, details, and then of the Caroline age, and then the important questions. So thank you very much for watching this lesson and have a very nice day. In the next lesson, we shall discuss the very important writer, playwright Ben Jonson. By that, we shall start the plays, okay, of that writer. So thank you once again, and keep learning, keep enjoying the English literature.